This story is called Two Wise Maids, and it's an original creation of mine, but if it sounds familiar to you, that might be because it has old tales traveling through it. I haven't actually told this since the start of the pandemic, because for me it requires, I know we're online also, I love you, but this is my first time in a room with strangers. And that means that you might be sitting next to a king or a queen or a maid or a wizard and not even know it. And the truth is that when you're sitting with your best friend or your spouse, you might be there too and not even know it. So everyone who came to hear stories is coming to find that out. Once upon a time, there were two queens who ruled a land together. Queen Ganda had been the princess in that land and inherited the throne from her father and grandmother before her. She married her beloved, May, and together they had everything. Beauty and youth, wealth and power, a rich and prosperous land, stables of horses, and chickens and goats, and oh, the gardens, and wit and humor and love. But as this is an old tale, you know what it is they didn't have. You can say it. They didn't have a child. And if they had been a king and a queen, that's a way. But as two queens, they had to plan and decide to have a child, and being young and busy and royal, they didn't. They were very happy. But as time went by, everyone around them, it seemed, was having children. And everyone around them was talking. And not just the ordinary talk, but royal talk, for queens needed to have an heir to rule after they were gone. One night in their bedroom, Queen May said it out loud: "Who will be our heir? Who will rule the land after we are gone?" Ooh, those words felt to Queen Ganda like a shadow had passed over her. She pulled up the covers and didn't answer. Next morning, sunlight came streaming in the window, but the shadow remained. And by nightfall, it blanketed their blankets, as thick and cold and real as the silence between them. Queen May had come from a large family, the kind with cousins and uncles and aunts with titles like great and grand and fifth and twice removed. She had 2 parents and 3 grandparents still alive, but all of them were back in her home country far away. No family here except Ganda. Queen Ganda had no one left alive of that older generation, and it was the weight of their expectations that made the shadow settle in the air above their bed. Finally, Queen May confided in her most trusted maid, "I want a child, a palace bustling with children, and I want an heir who I've raised and trained in my ways." Meanwhile, Queen Ganda confided in her most trusted maid, saying, "I don't want a child. I don't want to birth or nurse or raise one, and I'm busy here and abroad." Queen Ganda loved the parts of being queen that took her to the farthest reaches of the land and beyond. She liked diplomacy and adventure, and she didn't like to talk about after I am gone. Well, the 2 maids were friends, and friends talk, and talk gets around. So each found out what the other had said, and the shadow filled the room. Queen May moved out to the highest bedroom tower, and it had windows on all sides so that sunrise and sunset glinted in the glass, but a piece of the shadow had broken off and followed her there. Queen Ganda opened up the largest sitting room and put in a bed and opened the curtains, and a piece of the shadow followed her there. The maids were mortified. And they went together to the royal wizard and said, "Please help us restore our queens to their former happiness." The Maid of May said, "Give us a potion so that the queen," by which she meant Queen Ganda, "will want a child." But the Maid of Ganda said, "Give us a potion so that the queen," by which she meant Queen May, "will no longer want a child." "That will do you no good," said the wizard. "It's just moving the problem around." And it was. So they argued, using logical reasoning, raising their voices, taking their fists. "Enough," said the wizard. "There shall be a contest. The loser will have to administer the potion to their queen. But it must be a fair contest, something you are both good at." Well, one of the maids was a fine fencer, and one of them was a good swimmer. But the fencer was afraid of water, and the swimmer had never touched a foil. One of them could stack dishes up and down her arms and balance laundry baskets on her head, and one of them was a marvel at embroidery and could make large, elaborate scenes. But the one who was skilled with a needle was clumsy with housework, and the one with a dancer's poise, she was like Sleeping Beauty if you got her near a needle, pricked her finger, and the day was wiped out. "We both paint," said one of the maids. "Oh," the other nodded. They hardly had time to do it, but they were both fairly good painters. "It shall be a painting contest," said the wizard. "You must make your queen smile, and the happiest will be the winner. So paint something that is her heart's desire." The maids were set up in private rooms with real canvas and fine brushes and beautiful colors to mix with oil, and they were given time off each day to paint. The queens were told it was a contest to determine which of their maids was the better painter. The winning picture would hang in the throne room to much honor, and it would be a picture of that which the queen most desired. Oh, the maids painted, and the queens worried, "What will my maid reveal?" By day, they sat stiffly in the throne room, and at night retired to those dark, shadowed rooms too dense for dreams. Well, at the end of the week, the paintings were hung at opposite ends of the great hall, and the nobles were gathered in the center of the hall, and the queens were brought to face their paintings, covered, and the wizard gave a signal, and the maids took off the covers. Well, nobody could see the queens' faces, but it was enough to see their backs. Shoulders softened, heads dipped, and then they heard a sound that had long been absent from those halls: laughter. They turned, faced one another, crossed the room, and embraced. Then Queen Ganda announced, "Our maids are so wise, we leave the land in their care for the rest of the day while I and my queen go to the gardens to talk." Each queen gave her ring to her maid, and arm in arm they went out into the gardens with smiles so bright and laughter so bright, even a powerful wizard could not have said who was the happier between them. The people waited until the queens had really left, and then rushed the paintings. The Maid of May had painted Queen Ganda, and the Maid of Ganda had painted Queen May. Out in the garden, they faced one another and said, "Yes, you are my heart's desire." After a year, the paintings were both hung in the throne room to great fanfare. The painters were there, no longer maids, for they had been sent by the queens to university to get the schooling they had always wanted. And Queen May had opened up her own school right there in the palace, bustling with children, all of them orphans or those too poor to afford tuition. She oversaw their lessons and hired their tutors, and it was known that any one of them might be heir to the kingdom. Queen Ganda had just come back from an exploration of one of those undiscovered regions of the land, with a satchel full of scientific documents and presents for all the children. She spent plenty of time at home with her beloved, but plenty of time abroad, as she was now officially Minister of Foreign Affairs. And Queen May was officially Chief of Domestic Affairs, and this worked out very well indeed. And when it didn't, when the shadows grew out of place, not in the places that shadows belong, like hens brooding in corners or cats under the dresser, but shadows from silence, they'd walk and talk, or stand in the throne room and look at their paintings, or stand and face one another and say out loud, "Yes, you are my heart's desire."